The growl cut through the clinic like a warning siren the moment the syringe came into view. Not loud, not violent, but deep and fractured. The kind of sound that makes trained professionals freeze because it comes from pain rather than aggression. And everyone in that room understood instantly that this was not a situation they could force their way through. The German shepherd sat rigid on the stainless steel examination table, blood soaking into his fur and dripping onto the metal surface below, his powerful body trembling as he guarded his wound with the last of his strength, eyes locked on the veterinarian's hand as if that thin needle were a weapon aimed straight at his heart. This was Echo, a decorated canine, a dog who had sprinted into chaos without hesitation, who had tracked suspects through fire and smoke, who had obeyed every command ever given to him without question. And yet now he refused treatment, refused help, refused to let anyone close enough to touch the injury tearing through his shoulder. His vest was ripped and darkened with blood. The word police stretched across his back like a reminder of everything he had already given, and his breathing came in short, careful pulls, each one clearly costing him more than the last. Before we begin, don't forget to hit like, repost, or share. And I'm really curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Back to story. The veterinarian paused, lowering the syringe just slightly, while her face tight with concern, while Echo's handler stood frozen beside the table, fists clenched so hard his knuckles had turned white. He knew this dog better than anyone, knew the difference between fear and defiance. And this was something else entirely. This was a dog still on duty, still protecting, still refusing to stand down, even as his body begged him to stop. Seconds stretched thin. The room held its breath. Then a small voice broke the silence. It's okay, Echo. Everyone turned. Near the doorway stood a little girl, no older than 10, clutching a worn brown notebook to her chest like armor, her shoulders tense, but her eyes steady as they rested on the wounded dog. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She took a slow step forward, ignoring the quiet warning from the officer behind her, as if something inside her understood that this moment belonged to her as much as it did to the dog. Echo's ears twitched. The growl softened, though it didn't fully disappear. Stand down, partner. Stand down, partner, she said gently, her voice calm in a way that didn't match her age. The handler's breath caught. That wasn't something civilians said. That wasn't something anyone outside the unit knew. The dog's breathing faltered just for a second, his eyes narrowing as if searching through memory instead of the room, and the veterinarian lowered the syringe, completely now watching something unfold that none of her training could explain. The girl stepped closer, slow and respectful, stopping just short of the table. Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. Mission complete. Mission complete, she whispered. And then she spoke the final phrase. The one used only when everything was over. The one never written down. The one meant to tell a canine that it was finally safe. Echo's body sagged, his head lowered, and in that fragile, impossible moment every person in the room realized this was no longer just a wounded police dog refusing treatment, because somehow, against all reason, this little girl knew his unit's secret code, and whatever bond connected them was about to change everything. The room slowly exhaled as Echo finally allowed himself to lie down, his massive frame easing onto the table as if the strength holding him upright had been released by an unseen switch, and the veterinarian moved in quickly, carefully now, treating the wound with a gentleness reserved for something sacred rather than routine, because no one wanted to break whatever fragile trust had just been formed. The handler stood close, one hand resting near Echo's neck, without touching, his eyes never leaving the dog's face, while his mind raced with a single impossible question he couldn't shake. How did she know? The little girl remained where she was, still clutching the notebook, her breathing shallow now that the tension had caught up to her, but her gaze never left Echo. When the veterinarian finally nodded and said he was stable, that the bleeding was under control and the danger had passed, the handler turned toward her, his voice rough and unsteady, as he asked the question everyone else was afraid to say out loud. Where did you learn those words? The girl swallowed, her fingers tightening around the notebook before she slowly opened it and held it out, revealing pages filled with careful handwriting, drawings of paw prints, badges and dates written in the margins like memories she refused to let fade. My dad taught me, she said softly, and the room shifted the instant those words landed. The handler's face drained of color. Her father had been part of the same canine unit years ago, one of the handlers who never came home from a call that went wrong. A name etched into a plaque, a story told in quiet voices, a loss Echo had never truly recovered from. The girl took a step closer, tears finally spilling as she reached out and placed her small hand against Echo's neck, and the dog leaned into her touch without hesitation, a soft whine escaping his chest like recognition breaking through pain. He used to practice with me, she continued, her voice trembling but strong. He said if anything ever happened to Echo, I should tell him the mission was complete because heroes deserve to rest too. Echo's tail thumped weakly once against the table. The handler turned away, wiping his face, because in that moment it all made sense. The refusal, the fear, the way Echo had stayed locked in duty, despite the pain. Because this dog wasn't just injured, he was waiting for the one voice that could release him from a promise made long ago. As the treatment finished and the room settled, Echo's eyes slowly closed, his breathing finally deep and even, his body at peace for the first time since the injury. The girl stayed beside him until the end, whispering stories her father used to tell, stories of bravery, loyalty, and coming home, and every word seemed to stitch something back together that medicine never could. When she finally stepped away, the handler knelt in front of her, his badge catching the light as he spoke quietly. You didn't just save his life today, he said. You gave him permission to stop fighting. The girl nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks as she looked back at Echo one last time. He already saved mine, she whispered, and as the clinic lights dimmed and the door closed behind her, Echo slept peacefully, not as a police dog on duty, not as a weapon or a tool, but as a partner who had finally been told the truth he needed most, that his mission was complete and he was never alone. This story touched millions of hearts. Did it touch yours? Let us know with a like.